Welcome to the lecture on the countries within the world economy. Um, well, basically, in this part, we are, it might seem at first we might be a little bit diverging from the economics, especially in the first part, because countries can be taught as a political unit, and in some ways, the primary definition of countries and also uh, the major element that make up a country nation is viewed as political and to some extent sociological. However, that definition is important definition for economics as well, since countries are actually, without knowing it, the main focus of the economics. Uh, we are in this course we are aiming to create the I mean, discuss actually, not even to fully create ways to study world economy. Uh, However, uh, mostly, even in extreme schools of it, the economic system is studied within the nations, not within the countries. Focusing on countries, uh, focusing on single country, representative country. So, what's a country? And that's two. We might say there are two major elements of it. And well, before going into it, there is a short video on the president, which at this time of this recording is experiencing final days of his presidency. However, he was an important person in American politics, and the major thoughts and major ideas he has brought uh, are important. Important in the sense that they found so many supporters. So, uh, as a result, they are not even the most unpleasant ones are not easy to discard, even after his presidency is over. And one interesting speech he has made, one interesting concept he brought was on the national sovereignty. And he was confident on this issue, so confident that he has also made a speech in UN, and he told actually each of you two representatives of the nations are responsible primarily for your own country's benefit. Um, and you should work for your own country's benefit, and I'm working for the U.S. benefit. And this is the idea that globalization. This is kind of the idea counters the idea that globalization has made countries not that important, and mainly the world is now more open to everyone, and people are beginning to get beyond their national identities, and they begin to become, in a way, global citizens. Uh, Not maybe immediately, as you would easily learn when you are trying to go beyond the borders of Turkey without visa. You are not going allowed in, and getting visa is also a very difficult process unless you have special passports given to the some politically uh, important people in politically important positions, or green passport, again given to politically or important some people been working for state. Um, so basically, I mean, this idea that the national sovereignty is still national sovereignty is still important. The fact that nations make decisions for themselves are still important because we are not yet a global community. This idea was there in 1990s, especially for the developing countries. But uh, with currently, the idea has also climbed up to all the way to the top of the developed countries, especially to major ones like UK and the United States, which have been hegemonies in 19th century, and one of them is still arguably the hegemony of the world. So that's and well, Trump basically argued that the U.S. governments have gone too far, and actually, in the name of being showing a country that is working for the interests of the whole world, they have actually neglected the U.S. interests and U.S. interests basically. But that's also interesting because I mean, leadership of claiming leadership of the world in a way needs also being able to claim you are benefiting the whole world. But according to Trump, I mean, that attempt has actually ended up with the neglect of the people who are living in US. So watch the video. I assume that you have watched the video, which is basic speech. And let's continue. You can think about it. But let's then continue. Well, he is Donald Trump. I mean, he says a lot of weird things, but those words are, in my opinion, interesting, and it's necessary to pause and listen. Now, so countries on the right side are you can see on the right side the flags of different countries. Turkey is here, I believe. Turkey is here. United States, I could not see United States. I can see UK. UK is also not there. There are some colonies of UK, but UK is also not there. So it's interesting. Many of the most famous countries are not there. Brazil is here, for example. UK is here. So there are some. You can look to them. So when have been the countries formed? When have been the nations? The countries, as we know it, have formed in the world history. Well, you can go all the way back to the Egypt and Sumerian city-states, followed by other states in Mesopotamia, also Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and then throughout all the Middle Eastern region, including Turkey, Hittites, Persians, Arameans, basically. Egypt is an interesting case. It has been mostly continued. It continued all the way up to the Persian conquest. The main point is, however, when we are talking on states, usually states are not containing what can be called as nations, at least in today's sense. And that's an interesting argument, actually. But there are a few readings that are supporting this argument. States were usually an apparatus that is controlling a large area, and within the borders that are controlled by the state are different people with different traditions, and they don't feel they are part of a community. People in Persian Empire did not feel that they were part of a community. People in for example, Ottoman Empire were not feel that they were part of a community. In many ways, Roman Empire was also like that, although in Rome, maybe something was developing at the very end of it. People of Aztec Empire were not also feeling like that. Well, a rough sense of community existed in some cases when a certain culture is shared. For example, Turkish tribes were feeling they are roughly part of a community. So there were Turkish tribes, tribes similar to them, which they were also calling Turkish, and then there were these weird parentheses Chinese people. And in other areas, I mean, being a tribe doesn't mean you are like all other tribes. I mean, when you go to the Siberia up, you might meet other tribes which might be very different from the tribes that are from the Turkish tribes living in particular region. And this becomes especially clear when you look to the different tribes in Africa or Native American tribes in Latin America, in United States that were actually whose traditions have been recorded. You can see that even if we have nomadic tribes, or even if we have tribes that are not able to read and write, so reading and writing is considered as a threshold of civilization, so they are below this threshold. You can see that, well, the tribes are different from each other. But the fact that they are different, there are different tribes in different regions that are different from each other, and then there are certain tribes that are similar to each other. So tribes similar to each other tend to basically sometimes unite, sometimes act against this, against, let's say, the foreign enemy, which might be weird and different. But in many cases, also one or more of those tribes also very much like to unite with the enemy. I mean, the sense of community usually ends at the with the tribe, or in some cases also with the city states later on. City states begin to form, take place of tribes as the primary social unit. So, for example, very famously, many city-states of Greece, for example, when Persia invaded Greece, there was something that was called as a legend, almost legendary resistance of Greek people who have thrown Persians back. But not many of the Greek city-states have actually united with the Persians. When Carthaginians have invaded Italy, same happened actually. Many of the Italian city-states united with the Carthaginians. When Spain has invaded the Aztec Empire, many of the Aztec people, even the closest allies of the empire, have started to ally with the Spanish people. That's why Spanish people have actually won. Spanish people could not resist to a united front of the Aztec Empire. So nations, in that sense, were not there until very recently. There was sometimes the sense of belonging to similar community. Religions certainly have reinforced this also. Crusaders, and in case of Crusaders, you can see this. The Christendom, Islam, and Islam, the area which was regulated by Islam. But even that was not that certain. For example, Crusaders could find Arabic or Muslim allies, for example. And usually what today we call nation was limited to the small city-states. So they were kind of the not proto, but small microcosm of the nations. I mean, the Athenians were feeling that they were belonging to the same society with similar political system, cultural system, interaction with the people in the city, common economy, common military. So they feel that they were living in one single society. So, how did these nations then start to grow and become large entities like, Turkish nation, British nation, American nation, Italian nation? Well, according to word system theory, especially, but you can see the same idea also, for example, in the Homo sapiens book, the Sapiens book of Harari. Is a very good book. I haven't it here, but you can read that also. Anyway, we are close to 15 minutes mark, so let's stop here and continue in the next